They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to Susie Maurer. Susie is a dreamer by spirit, a writer by instinct, and a big sister by habit. She currently lives in Colorado with her favorite people in the world. Welcome, Susie. I'm so excited to have you on today.
I'm so excited to be here, honestly.
So tell me more about your favorite people and how old your kiddos are.
So my favorite people are my husband and then my two kids. I have Landon. He is turning 10 next month, and he's my oldest, which, when your baby turns 10, your first baby turns 10, that means you've been a mom for a decade. And then Nova, my little wildcat, is 5, and she's started kindergarten last fall.
So we have a unique parenting experience that we're going to be talking about today. Both of us lived in England. You lived in England for 4 years, right?
4 years, October 17 to October 21.
Yes, and I lived in England for 3 years. And our time over there overlapped, but we actually only saw each other one time, which I
Yes.
think is really funny. But we knew each other via online friendship before I moved over there. And actually, when you got your orders with the Air Force to move there with your husband, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my dream. I'm just going to live through Susie. And then we found out we were going to move over there. And I'm like, it's even more of a dream. And so it was just really funny. But I did watch your progress because you lived over there for a year before we ever moved over there.
Yeah. I think had just moved. We had just gotten there when you got your orders, I think.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, oh, wow. Like, how do I stay excited for her and not overwhelm her with everything I'm getting overwhelmed with right now?
Because
In
you're
the
like,
moment.
it's not so much of a dream as so much of reality.
It's a dream, but unfortunately right now I feel naked in the dream because I don't know what I'm doing. So
that is a very good metaphor. So really what I wanted to dive into today is the unique experience of parenting overseas, what it's like to just live in a different culture as a person, but also a parent. And I don't know, just share our stories because I think it's interesting. And I think that, people can be curious about that. But what do you think was the biggest learning curve when you first got overseas?
So I was listening to this expat podcast, and this lady was in Denmark. So it's a little bit different because language barrier. But she said, when you get overseas and you move overseas, you feel like a big, dumb baby. And I will say, going to England, you feel like a big, dumb 4-year-old because you can understand the words and stuff, but you still don't really know when to cross the street. And so feeling like a big, dumb 4-year-old while parenting children is just absolutely terrifying. I felt like incompetent. I didn't even know how to get to the library. I couldn't take my kid to McDonald's because I was afraid of the roundabout. I was terrified.
Can you explain the roundabout? What is a roundabout for people who are not
So
sure?
we call them traffic circles here sometimes. And instead of like a stoplight, there's a big circle and you merge in and then you merge out. But in England and in Europe, because everyone does it, it's really fast paced. And I think I had seen 2 in my life, and they were in neighborhoods and they'd gone 10 miles an hour. And there was this big roundabout, and it was off, we would call it a freeway, but it's not a freeway there, a motorway. And so it was really busy and it was terrifying. And I couldn't figure out how I was supposed to merge while driving on the wrong side of the road, in and out. And it took me 4 months to drive there.
I hear you. Driving there is terrifying. We had this big roundabout. They called it the Five Ways. It was really near the base where we lived. And everybody was like, oh, the Five Ways. It was like this big initiation once you actually got to drive in the Five Ways, because you have to actually merge to the left and nothing goes to the right in England.
Yeah.
Everything's on the left. And so you're having to learn how to drive it feels like for the first time. All your driving
Yeah.
confidence has gone out the window. And
Completely
so
dissipates.
yes, and you're like everybody's merging at like 30 miles per hour and you're like, "Ah,
Yes.
so
Terrifying.
scary." Yes, I really like that metaphor of being like the big dumb 4-year-old. I I kind of underestimated the cultural I thought my cultural like integration would be easier because
Yeah.
common language. But the thing is like
Hmm.
you use the same words, but you're speaking a completely different language. You're like, "What? What?" I remember one time we just moved and we went to the theater like to see a live action play. And I really had to go to the bathroom and I went up to ask where the bathroom was and I was like, "Excuse me, can you show me? Where's the bathroom?" And he was like, "Excuse me?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "What? The toilet?" And I'm like, and then I'm embarrassed because he said the word toilet, and my American sensibilities just like blush at using the word toilet.
Yes.
And then I'm like, yes, the toilet." And I'm like, "Oh, that was the worst interaction I have had to date." And really, it wasn't because I had many more embarrassing moments, but asking for the toilet as opposed to the restroom, which we're so polite in America to say restroom,
Right.
everybody just says toilet, and so I had to learn to ask for the toilet. So
I
it's
remember
simple as
that.
that.
I had an funny conversation with my landlord. Honestly, it was a few months, like we had lived there for a while. And she was telling me about the pins. She's like, the pins under the cabinet. I was like, the pins? What are you talking about? She was talking about pants. She just said it in a very distinct British accent. And I think everyone always thinks of like the Queen's English when they think of British accents, but there's so many different accents. And it took me a while to figure it out, but what was really disconcerting for me was when I opened my mouth, I was the one with the accent. I was the one with that loud, brash American trash can accent. And I almost didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah. I had a while when we first moved there. It wasn't right at the beginning, but it was a couple months in that when I was in public, I didn't even want to talk. I
Hmm.
was like, and I've always been very social. I'm more outgoing. I want to say hi to people at the park or have a little chat with somebody at the grocery store. But I would just be as silent as I could because I knew as soon as I opened my mouth that I was going to be outed as the other.
Hmm.
I was not, I did not belong. I was going to have this conversation about, "Oh, are you visiting?" And I'm like, "No, I live here." And then you have to like
Yep.
this whole explanation. And then you're just,
Whole life story
yeah.
after you open your mouth to say hello.
And I was just like, I had to get over that, but that was the weirdest feeling. I did not feel like myself. I
Yeah.
felt shy. I felt um almost embarrassed to
Hmm.
be living in this culture where I didn't belong. And I think gradually as I lived there longer, I was able to feel more comfortable. But using the whole metaphor from the podcast, like I was in the goop. I was like dissolving into something and
Yes.
I had to emerge as something new and I did not expect that. I thought I would kind of go into this new culture. Yes, I'd have to learn some new things as a woman and like taking care of my children, but it was way more than I expected, especially having to, navigate new systems like schooling in this
Yes.
culture. So tell me about how old Landon was when you got to England and your schooling experience.
I love this story. So Landon was 3. We moved to England. Landon was 3.5. I was 6 weeks pregnant with my daughter. Um, we had planned our pregnancy, our second baby around this move because we had gotten orders well, not orders, but we gotten the assignment about 14 months in advance. So we had delayed our second pregnancy. Then I got pregnant and I miscarried, and then I got pregnant again with Nova. So I'm like first trimester pregnant and I don't get very sick, but I'm very moody and grumpy. And I have this adorable little 3-year-old and we're in this little village and I can't find a playground. And it's also November by the time we got to our village because we were in temporary housing for a while. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with him. I'm from California. I don't know what to do when it's cold and it's raining. Had no clue what to do. And I knew there was a village school because my landlady had mentioned it. And so I walked to this school. And mind you, I walked the wrong way. I walked the long way along the road for 6 months straight because I did not realize that in England, you can walk behind people's houses and there's paths everywhere. Because in the US, especially in the rural US, which I was used to, you don't like just cross through people's property. so much. So I'm like walking along the road for 6 months straight with my 3-year-old. And so we walk and we're in this beautiful picturesque village. Everyone always commented on it. And I see this playground and I see this little school. And I'm like, a friend, my first American friend in the entire country, had told me that England had free nursery, which is preschool for 3-year-olds. And I was like, I'm just going to walk in and I'm just going to see. I bet that's too good to be true, right? Because we're American. Nothing is free, blah, blah,
Nothing,
blah. And it's
especially
not going to be
preschool.
good, right? It's not going to be good quality if it's free either. So I walk in and there's like lady at the desk and she's so nice to me. And I was, first of all, taken aback that someone was so nice to me because I'm obviously a foreigner. And she was so kind to me. She's like, oh yeah, it's free. Just bring in his birth certificate. And I was like, well, it's American. Will that count? Which is really stupid, but I didn't know. And she's like, it's fine. Fill out all the paperwork. And I was like, okay. Like, I keep waiting for the catch. I'm waiting for them to be like, JK, it's not free. I fill out the paperwork. I enroll him. And then I think he started some point in November. I think we've been in country for about a month. And he loved it. He just like ballooned. He came home and told me about all his friends. We would walk to school every day. And it was almost like English education feels very almost Montessori-esque. And I mean, Charlotte Mason is derived from it. They played outside in all sorts of weather. It was all hands on. And he just thrived and it was free. And I was a stay-at-home mom at that point, and he's getting this incredible education, 15 hours a week, and I don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, I was blown away by that too. And I when I moved, we had a how old was Eli? He was 3, he was about to turn 4. So we moved in the summertime, and they have a summer break in England that's like 6 weeks long. That's their
Yes.
long break, and then they start school back again like no um September 1st. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
like the first week of September. Yeah.
yeah. So we were getting him all set up, and somebody had said, yeah, you should check into Busy Bees. And I'm like, okay. And so we went over there, and I also had the whole like, you get 15 hours free. And I'm like, no way. Like,
Right.
and I had paid, you know, $200, $300 a month for preschool for my other child. And he only went like 3 hours a day, like twice a week.
Yeah.
And I paid that because I was working and I needed some time for him to like,
Yep.
I needed to like scramble to get my work done while he was in school. And I thought, okay, like I'm gonna have to pay. And when they said it was actually free, I was just like, I cannot believe this. And
Right.
so he went Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 7:30 to 12:30. That's 5 hours, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was very early, but my husband went to work early, so he drove him every day. And so
Yeah.
and it was amazing. Like they had this, they called it a farm school, and they had all these animals like
Yep.
llamas and alpacas and like goats, and they would go out and see the animals. And when you walked in, they had a little bunny hutch, and they had these like bird aviaries and this beautiful like garden-esque walk up to the main area. And we'd say hi to the birds and the bunnies every day. And it was educational and like hands-on, and they played outside. Also, they had an indoor swimming pool, and I could pay £5 a week for him to go to swimming lessons, and
Yep.
I didn't have to go. They like gave
Yeah.
him swimming lessons for £5 a week. That is how much I paid for this preschool. And I cannot pick my job off the floor. Like that type of preschool wasn't even available in the States where I
No,
lived.
it didn't even exist.
No, that would have been like you have to live in a city that has like mega resources for having like this Montessori farm preschool with an indoor pool. Like that just
Not in the middle. Whereas this is in the middle of rural England. And you're
yes,
like, oh yeah, this is completely normal.
we lived in a small village. It was called Mildenhall, and this was just their local nursery. And so my mind was just blown, like yours was.
Yeah.
And he loved going to nursery. He just loved it. It was so good. And and he picked up a little English accent, and it was like the cutest thing ever. I was just like in love with him all over again. But oh my goodness, like seeing the way that other countries do childcare, and you could pay for all day. So 15 hours is available to everybody for 3 years old until you go to reception at 4 years old, which is kind of like kindergarten over there. But that is available to everybody. But if you would need it to work all day, you could pay for additional hours.
And if you both worked all day, if both parents worked all day, there was a 30-hour entitlement,
Oh,
actually.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
So Yeah. So we actually got that when we left with our youngest. We got the 30-hour entitlement. You did have to prove, I think basically both parents have to work 30 hours a week and then you get 30 hours covered, which was just, and I think they've recently expanded it too. So there's more hours covered now. It was just, I was blown away. I didn't even have words for it, how much I loved it. And that is why we ended up transitioning my oldest to the British school for reception, because we love the British school because I could walk there in 8 minutes. It was perfect.
Yeah, when we went, my older twins were going into fourth grade. So or fifth grade? They were going into fifth grade. So they were like
Mm.
11. And then I had Silas was going into kindergarten. So they went on the base school because I was very nervous about putting them into the British school system, especially my older kids, because they have learning differences. And so I didn't know how that would be. Um,
I think that was a good choice,
I didn't want
though.
to navigate that in the British school system. I didn't know how that worked. So they went to base schools, like American schools, and that was good.
Mhm.
But Eli, he was he was 3. We got this, 15 hours a week for free. And
Yeah.
then he was doing so well, we did put him into reception and then year 1 in the British school system. And I loved the British school system. But also, I'll tell you, I was so used to nursery. And then we moved up to reception, which was at a
So
different
much more
school.
serious.
It was. So I went to this different school and I felt like, and I had already had 3 other children go to school, but I felt like I was a first-time mom putting her kid in school for the first time, plus I was a foreigner. And I just felt like, I don't know, I felt like that feeling that you're naked in the dream and you're just like walking in, you have no idea what you're doing. And I was so nervous, even though we had already been in England for like a year. Was your school at the same place as the nursery or
I
through a school?
lucked out. So he went from nursery and he just went to the other side of this room. It was a half full and he went to reception. So he had all the same teachers and I was gonna say coworkers, classmates. But what was interesting to me was when they started reception, they had this thing like, do you want the teacher to come to your home and have a conversation with you? And in my American brain, I was like, no, no, that's invasive. No. And I just had a baby. So he was funny part, you mentioned the summer break. I did not know the summer break was only 6 weeks until June. And then I was expecting him to be off and then he wasn't, which was really nice. So I had a baby. I had no other childcare and I could still drop my kid off at nursery for free, which was a blessing. But I remember just being like, no, I don't want you to come to my house and have a conversation with me. And then I just remember looking at the website and trying to click on the right things because in British schools for the uniforms, they send you exactly what you're going to wear.
And
And
you
at
can
the
get the
time,
uniforms at the grocery store.
yes, you can go to Tesco. At the time, it was funny. I felt really daunted by it. And now having experience in the American system, I'm like, this is way better.
Yeah.
But everything that first year, I just remember from signing them up to reception and feeling like it felt like college because you had to hope and cross your fingers for a placement to the Christmas nativity play being like an actual Christmas nativity play with Mary and Joseph
Yes,
in the
in their
public
like
schools.
quote unquote public school. That blew my mind too.
That was crazy. I was like, what? That's legal? I was like, oh wait, there's not a separation of church and state.
Yes,
And it wasn't
Eli
overly
was a
religious.
donkey. Yeah, what
Yeah,
was your son?
he was. So Landon was the Joseph the first year, and then the second year was hilarious. In year 1, they made the American kids the wise men because they were the quote foreign ones as like a joke. They're like, let's make the American kids the wise men. So I think there's 2 American kids and an Australian. It was so funny.
That's perfect. I absolutely love that. Yeah, so navigating the British school system, I was so sad when we ended up leaving. And I
Yeah.
wish we could have continued. I just loved it for Eli. I thought it was so good for him. But that was something that I felt so unprepared. Even though I was already an experienced mother, being in this different culture felt like I was doing everything for the first time, plus with
Yes.
like an extra learning curve. So, but back to driving, I just remember when I was learning how to drive over there, my husband gave me this like crash course driving on base, and they had all these roundabouts on base too, so I got practice driving
Mhm.
on base, and we lived off base, but we went to base a lot. So driving on base felt a little safer than actually being on the
Mhm.
main roads. But I
It's also
had
slower.
yeah, 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 you go like 10 miles per hour. But I just remember had this vivid memory of I had to drive by myself and we had just gotten a minivan and the steering wheel's on the opposite side and I'm like white knuckling it down the road and all my kids are in the car. I think we were going to like a sports physical so I could sign them up for sports. We had been there like
Mhm.
3 weeks. It was insane. And I'm like, no, we're going to dive in. We're going to do this thing. And my 3-year-old Eli, he was over it. He had never had meltdowns in the States, but that was the beginning of his long journey with meltdowns. So, he really just like gave it his all. He was screaming his head off in the minivan. And I am trying to drive by myself on this English road. And really there's no one around, but I was just terrified and he's screaming. And I just knew there was nothing I could do. Like I couldn't tell him to hush. I couldn't tell him it's okay, honey, settle down. I just knew he had to get it out of his system. And but I like my heart was beating so fast and I was hot and sweaty like all over. I was literally like having this physical reaction to trying to do this new thing with my children. And it felt like I was brand new. I felt like that big dumb 4-year-old and I had to relearn how to be confident in myself in a
Yes.
new country with the driving, with the going out and doing things with my kids, like you said, going to McDonald's, like something that feels so easy and simple. Like I just want to take my kid and get a Happy Meal. It feels like so daunting going to a new country. And that's something I couldn't have anticipated for myself before moving over there.
No, I had no mental preparation for that. I thought it was basically gonna be like Canada, honestly. And it was not. I had a funny driving story. So the roundabouts, and I was driving home from our local base. So we had a base my husband worked at, and we had a local base, and then we had the bases you guys were at, which were about an hour away. And I didn't drive a lot the first few months. And I always got the signs confused, like the no stopping versus don't enter sign. And I took the wrong exit off the roundabout and I went onto an on ramp. Like I exited onto an on ramp.
No.
And here's the thing that people think, here's the interesting thing is you don't realize until you need it that you use other cars for cues, right? So you see a car on the other side of the road, you're like, okay, I go the opposite direction. You see a car coming, you don't. So I exited and I immediately was like, "Oh, I'm on the wrong side of the road." And so I like pulled off and because I saw a semi, thankfully the semi, because it's England, like stopped politely and let me like turn around, which I'm convinced would have never happened in America. But they like stopped politely and turned around and like let me turn around. And my son's in the back seat, like, "Mommy, you really need to listen to the GPS. You're really bad at it."
You're
But
like, "Hey."
apparently, like someone took a picture of it and like they put it on this like Facebook page of like dumb things Americans do in that area.
Oh, you're like,
And
that's
my friend
me.
was
I
like,
am the dumb American.
"Yeah." My friend was like, "Was that you?" I was like, "That was me. I was the dumb American. I made the Facebook page." But they were so polite to me that I never did it again.
Oh my gosh. And I think you just have to like humble yourself and realize I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. And I think that it helped me give more grace to my kids feeling like they were fish out of water because I felt like I was a fish out of water. And I'm like,
Yeah.
we are in this together. We have to like work in this together. I also know that I had to make a conscious choice to just dive in and do it scared
Yeah.
because there is a lot of comfort and staying in your fear and being like, no, I don't feel comfortable going and to this castle. I have to drive on country roads, and country roads are narrow AF. And if
Hmm.
somebody comes, you basically just have to pull off into the hedge and let them
Yeah.
pass because they're so
Yes.
narrow. But
It's
my
completely mind blowing that that is
yeah,
what you do.
but my husband was gone. He had a lot of traveling when we were there. And there were times he was gone for months. In fact, he was deployed when we were over there. And I thought, okay, I can either just stay in the house and do nothing and only rely on and be like, I can only do things if he's here. Or I can realize that my limits are like 30 minutes away or 45 minutes away, and I can find things that we can do in that radius. Oh my gosh, there were so many things. Castles and
Yeah.
gardens and like cool playgrounds and things. And I'm like, okay, we're just gonna do this. And I remember I would tell the kids, I'm like, you know what? I really need you to be quiet while mommy's driving because I really, really have to
Yeah.
concentrate. And were
Mommy's
they
gonna take
quiet?
the wrong
No.
exit.
Yes. And drive the wrong way on the road. And then you're like, oh,
Yeah.
But I just remember I had to just step into that bravery and just do it scared because I was really scared. I had 5 children. I had a baby over there just like you did. Oh, I also want to talk about going to the embassy. So we finish this story and then we'll talk about having to go to the embassy. So yeah, but I did it and I'm like super proud of myself for like stepping so out of my comfort zone. And I think that that can apply in motherhood in other
Yeah.
situations because having a baby can unlock so many new anxieties. Like maybe you had a preemie and you're like, I really want to protect this child from illness and I also need to like take care of my mental health. How can I do both? How can I like work through my anxiety and keep my child safe, but also like take care of my mental health and need to like see people or go out of the house or things like that. I mean, that's just like one example. There's so many things that motherhood can bring up as far as anxiety and learning how to
100%.
just say, I can do this. I'm going to figure out how to make my life work for me instead of just being stuck in this place of fear and being like, I can't do it because I don't have XYZ, because my spouse isn't here, because I'm in a new situation, a new town, a new country. I just can't. And I think I just had to really like work through that I can't and be like, I'm going to try.
Yeah. Let's do the new thing. Let's do it.
So you had your baby overseas. Tell us, Susie, what it's like to have a baby overseas and getting the birth certificate, etc.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So we were not stationed at the base that had the hospital. We were at the time, it was an hour and a half drive because of construction. And I knew that if I had a baby on the British system, that I was not going to be comfortable with that. And so I had it in the American system. So we drove an hour in labor, active labor, because I wanted that VBAC. So I figured if I didn't leave the house till I was in active labor, I'd get there, have the baby. I end up with preeclampsia. So my 4-year-old is with a friend. Thank goodness I had a friend, right? Who was watching him and then her toddlers while she's solo parenting, because this is what you do when you live overseas. You just do the hard thing. Finally, we get home. I'm on blood pressure meds. And we're like, oh, we have to legalify this baby. Like, we have to
My
make
little
her
illegal baby, my
yeah,
little illegal
a little
alien
illegal
baby.
baby. And you don't think about that in America, because in America, you're like in the hospital and you sign 2 things and I'm like, cool, you're gonna get the paperwork and it's super relaxed. You don't have to prove anything. So in England, there's a bunch of steps and I'm probably a little fuzzy, but we had to make an appointment at the embassy. And she was born on June 10th. So we didn't look until the week after she was born. And it's summer, so everyone's trying to do it because they want to make sure they have it so they can travel. And the only appointment we could get was like an 8 a.m. appointment, and we were a couple hours away. So we had
Because
to wake up.
the embassy's in London, like
Yes.
London proper.
And we were not in London. Everyone thinks we were in London. We were in the middle of the English countryside, like Pride and Prejudice style. And so I am on medication to bring down my blood pressure. And so I have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I have to set an alarm at 4:30 in the morning with a newborn. And I remember standing up and almost passing out because the blood pressure meds were just like trying to make me pass out. So we hop on this train and I'm like wearing my brand new baby. I have my 4-year-old and I have my husband, and we take the train into London. And then we have to walk to the embassy from the train station. And I'm like wearing her and nursing her through London, which was kind of cool. That was kind of a cool experience. And we get to the embassy and we have to bring all this paperwork, basically proving that she's our child and that we're American citizens. And I remember they had to like look at her, but I was nursing her. And so I was like, hi. And then the guy was like, oh, I'm sorry, man. And so it was almost like in a discussion, like, are you truly American? Are you truly married? Are you truly all of these things?
Yeah,
And I
you had
don't,
to bring your passports, your
yeah,
marriage certificate, like your orders to be in the country. It was like
so
this
much paperwork.
pile of paperwork.
And we had to get, was it a certificate of birth abroad? So she had a British, that was another thing too, is because she was born off base. It was like on base. It was one more step to get a British birth certificate. We had to get multiple copies so that if we lost one, we didn't necessarily have to fly back to London to get one. Then we had to apply for a certificate of birth abroad, which basically says that she's a birthright American citizen. And then because you're in a foreign country, you have to get your newborn a passport, which like most newborns don't have passports, at least not in America. So we had her passport picture. She's like 2 weeks old and red and screaming. It was very cute. all of this work while I just wanted to be at home, like nursing my baby. But my husband did most of the paperwork, but it was wild how much more work it was just to make my baby a legal American citizen than it was
Yes.
when my son was
Yeah.
born in California.
I remember with Grace, and I had a C-section, so we waited a longer time because I just
Right.
couldn't walk. Like I was like
Yeah, you
very
can't
weak.
walk, so
And so, but by the time I think she was like 3 weeks to a month old, and we went to, you have to go to your county seat. So our county seat was Barry St. Edmunds, and that was about 30 minutes from where we lived. And I love going to Barry. I still have friends over there who go to Barry, and I'm like, I know where you are. But we had
so
to go to
beautiful.
Barry, and anything in England, it is a walking country. So
Yeah.
you find a car, it's not like you park by the place you're going in.
No.
You find a car park where all the cars are, and then you walk. And
Yep.
so we had to walk and walk and walk, and then we finally find this county register's office, and then we have to like we had to bring in all the proof, like our passports, our marriage certificate. We have to like prove that she's our baby, and then we actually have this beautiful birth certificate. It has like flowers on it, and like
Yeah, it's
it's
beautiful.
lovely. And it just says like she was born here and in England. And people have asked me, oh, is she automatically a British citizen?
Oh, the
And she's not,
imperialists
no.
don't like other people being imperialistic. That's why I tell people. I was like, they get to be imperialists. We don't get to be imperialists.
No, she's not automatically a British citizen. However, if she wants to apply for dual citizenship later in her life, she can because she was
Hmm.
born in England, but she is 100% American citizen. She's not a
Yeah.
British citizen.
Most common question. I'm like, that's what you're asking? Not like, how hard was it? But like, that's what you're asking?
Yes, and I had pictures of us going to the embassy too, and like we got a little sticker like I'm an American.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so cute afterwards. But that was a good day. Like I had fun, and I did it when I was feeling a little bit better too. So by the time we actually went, I think she was about 6 weeks old, maybe even 8 weeks old. And we went to London and we went to the embassy, and it was like it's this huge building and has
Yeah.
fountains all around.
It's very
It's a
fancy.
very fancy building, and it felt kind of intimidating because
Yeah.
you do have to bring all these documents, and you're like, what if she's not my child? And I'm like, she literally
Yeah.
came out of my body. She really is
Yeah.
my
You're
child.
like, what if I accidentally smuggled this child into England? I'm like, I did. I was pregnant with her. It's really ridiculous. You're like postpartum and your brain's not functioning right. And you're like,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It having a baby, and I did have my baby on the American hospital too. So people ask me like, what was it like giving birth overseas? I'm like, well, it was different, but it wasn't like I had a midwife in the hospital,
yeah.
like it wasn't like call the midwife,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But it was a very different experience as far as having all four of my other kids in the States, pretty smooth process, and then having a child overseas. You do have to show your birth certificate in many different situations later in life, and I'm wondering how that's going to crop up for her. Like
I
if
know.
she's going to have to jump through a lot of different paperwork or things like that to prove like her citizenship, or I don't know how
I've
that's going to
read
play out.
I
I think
don't know. Like I've read it helps to like carry the like certificate of birth abroad too, because I'm like, her according to her birth certificate, she looks British. Like, and I was like, because currently the certificate of birth abroad is the only thing that I have that since her passport is now expired that proves she's American because her birth certificate is British, and that's been
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So as you look back at your parenting time in England and all these things that were hard and things that were awesome, how do you think that transformed you as a mother? Like, how do you think it shaped you into the mother and the woman you are today?
I think that it taught me so many things. It taught me that everything we consider normal is just a cultural norm. It's not necessarily a behavioral norm, it's a cultural norm. Like you'll see the conversations in mommy groups about, oh, should my kid go to kindergarten at 5 or 6? Like they're too young to write at 5. And whereas we know that British kids read and write at 4. And so, I mean, the British system is set up for that too, but everything that we consider normal is just a cultural thing. And so it's really taught me to be like, I don't have to cling so tightly to something I consider normal because, hey, someone probably does it differently and maybe they do it better than me, or maybe they do it worse than me, or maybe I need to pivot. Um, it also just made me a lot more confident in who I was. You're talking about parking, and when my son, he had a lazy eye and we had to go down to Cambridge and different hospitals for some reason, and that was like The most terrifying thing in the entire world was to find a parking spot. The hospital wasn't stressful. Parking was. And I remember when he ended up getting his surgery in the States, I was just like, I can do this. Like, I can do this big surgery because I have been through something so much harder, which felt harder. And it also taught me to be really independent in my mothering. And I am the oldest of many kids, so I was always had to be kind of independent. I never had that like, oh, like, oh, everyone's gonna come and help you type of thing. Because when you're the oldest, you are your own little adult. But now I'm just like, I went through an entire pregnancy solo. I went through a postpartum solo. I raised children in a foreign country with just myself or with my husband. I can do this. Like, I have done big, hard things. And so I can continue to do big, hard things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that any challenge a person goes through in motherhood, whether you are living overseas or you go through a difficult pregnancy or you move far away from your family, it can feel like you are in the goop at the beginning. But I think that most women are so resilient and they realize, hey, I've got to pick myself up. I am stronger than I even know, and I'm going to come out this other side. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's going through like an incredibly hard time that you are stronger than you know. And this is crazy hard, but you're going to come out and you're going to look back at yourself and be like, wow, I came through that and I am doing great. I'm an
Yep.
awesome mom. I'm an awesome woman, and I'm going to get through this. And it doesn't mean you're not going to cry a lot.
Mm. You
And
have to cry. I think that's almost part of the process
yes,
and being like, I can't do this. This is so hard. Yes, I can. And pick yourself back up.
yes, yes. And the doing it scared, I think, is so important because then you do it afterwards. You're like, oh my gosh, I did that.
Yep.
I took my kids to, this little castle ruins all by myself. And we
Yes.
navigated the gift shop and we navigated the country roads, even though we hit a pothole and I thought that I busted a tire and I screamed at the top of my lungs and then had to get out of the car on this grassy pullaway and then realized I didn't pop a tire and we made it home. That was a true story.
One of my favorite stories, one of my favorite England stories is when we first got there. So we lived about 25 minutes from the support base. And there was a lots of like really tight, horrible country road. And I remember driving past it like after we'd been there for like a year. And I was like, I will never drive that road. I looked at my husband and I said, I will never drive that road. Well, hilariously, I ended up getting a job on that base. And my daughter, my baby, my second one was 1. And I would drive that road at 2:00 in the morning, 3 nights a week. And I did it. And I was like, whatever, can't see anything. There's a peacock. This road is 2 inches wide. And I did it. Like it was no big deal. And every time I see pictures of that road, I'm like, I drove that road. I drove that road at 2:00 in the morning by myself. Look how much I grew.
Oh yeah, in England there's no street lights. So
No.
everything is dark, dark, like dark, the darkest night of the soul. Like when you're
Yeah.
driving at night, it's
They also like
terrifying.
to close the main roads for some reason late at night to do construction, which was really frustrating when I was driving home from work late at night.
You're like, why? Why?
Why this doesn't make sense, but
Yeah.
okay.
Well, Susie, this was a fun conversation. I love reminiscing with you. I love like comparing stories, and I hope that people enjoy listening to this and listening to our experiences. But to end up our time together, we'll focus on a little closer to home. What is one thing you are doing to enjoy your life this week?
So whenever I say this, I feel like I am misrepresenting myself, but exercise is something that absolutely keeps my brain ticking and makes me feel happy. And whenever I say that, I feel like people think I'm very fit and I'm not, but you don't have to be a super fit person to exercise. And exercising and sweating and moving my body is something that makes me so happy, especially in the winter time. And frankly, working for money is just something that I do that just really makes me feel like an adult, like I'm taken along. And it's kind of, I don't love like attaching my value to money, but it is something that even if it's a little bit of money, I feel so much better about.
Yeah, I hear you. What's your go-to exercise routine right now?
I just do a Tabata video. So it takes max 30 minutes. You get it done. You can go pick up your kids, get angry and sweaty and punchy, and then you're done and you did
Yep.
it.
Yep. You're like, yes, now my endorphins are making me
Yep.
happy.
Yep. I can feel accomplished today.
That's right. Well, thank you, Susie. I'm so glad you came on the podcast today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com. Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today, you know what? We're going to stop. We're going to start over. Pronounce your last name for me.
Maurer. So it rhymes with power.
Okay, great. I wanted to get that straight. Okay, we're going to start over. How that?
I could talk for 2 hours about the driving and how it made me feel like I was 15 again.
Yes.
Oh.